Hey everyone, welcome back to another redstone video. Today we're taking a look at a super smelter that I've been working on for quite some time. Kind of an on and off project over the past few months just because I haven't really had too much time with it. I had a few issues along the way as well, which have hopefully now all been sorted. So I'm going to run through some of the details with you. I'll showcase the singular module and then I'll show you the slightly larger 1280 furnace array. And I'll leave the link for the download in the description, but obviously make sure you watch a majority of this video because there's going to be some key bits of information you're going to need before you get started. And obviously if you have any problems, they'll probably already be answered in the video, so make sure you do watch it. And obviously if you did end up enjoying the video and you found it useful, make sure you hit the like button, consider subscribing, all that good stuff. So I want to run through a couple of the advantages of this smelter array compared to other ones that existed. I actually built another 128 furnace array before. Actually, it came with a few flaws and a few features that it didn't have. A few of them being, first of all, it didn't allow for non-filled boxes, so it only worked with completely filled boxes, and it wasn't actually completely fuel efficient. Unfortunately, it was relatively fuel efficient. I would have said about 90% fuel efficient, but it just wasn't 100%, which I've actually rectified in this model here. So this is now 100% fuel efficient. It also takes in any level of shulker box, so it doesn't actually need to be full shulker boxes only. It can be half filled. It can have just even 2 smeltable items in there. It wouldn't be a problem. Any fuel level works with this smelter. Now, after doing some testing, I actually noticed that in addition to all of that, this actually works out with more than one item at a time. So you could actually do 2 smeltable items at the same time. So if you had a box of sand, for example, and a box of logs that you wanted to smelt, you could do that with this no problem. Now, actually, after doing a bit more testing, I realized that if you're only using a one shulker box at a time, it could have almost as many items as you wanted to smelt possible in one box, but it only works with one box consistently. I've actually tried one box filled with 5 different smeltable items and did half a double chest of shulker boxes worth, and it all worked completely fine. But when I did a much larger sample size on that machine over there, there was a point where it actually ended up breaking the system. So I would say if you're doing one shulker box at a time, you could put as many items as you want. Otherwise, if you want to, you can put in 2 items without any issues. So before I get started and we start explaining too many things, let's go ahead and do a little sample. So what we'll do is we'll use this shulker box full of sand, and we're going to do another shulker box that we'll add for, let's do logs just because it'll be easier. And we're actually only going to do half a shulker box, or let's do 1 row here just to be a little bit more specific. And we'll go ahead and put these in there and let them smelt. So actually this design has taken some inspiration from Mango's design. It's using the same trick that he used placing the minecart down using the jungle log and the cocoa beans. This was actually something that was showed to me by Jaycraft. I had no idea how to actually use this system, so I was taking a little tour around their creative world, should I say, and they showed me a smelt that he made, and he used the same trick for aligning the minecarts. I'll run through the alignment for that once we get into the more specifics breakdown of the smelter array itself. But as you can see here, essentially all that's happening is that we're running the minecarts through over and over again to pick up the items, distributing them around the smelter array, and you can see here, as soon as this one's just about finished, the next item pops in straight away. And that's what makes it the 100% fuel efficient. Now, doing an entire shulker box of items from start to finish, so the very moment you place in a full shulker box of smeltables into the chest and have it outputted into here, is almost exactly 3 minutes for my testing, which is pretty good. It's not the fastest smelter array possible, but it is the most flexible, not having to only be full shulker boxes, for example. And I'm actually working on one that's going to be kind of covers all of the aspects, which is going to be the fastest smelter array, along with the ability to have it be non-filled shulker boxes. Now, one of the reasons why this smelter array runs so well is actually because of the box loader. Now, this is a box loader that I found from the, I believe it's the Storage Tech Discord. This is a box loader by, I believe his name is Iron Shooter, or Monochrome Storage, as he's also known as. So this is a modified version of his box filler, and I've made some adjustments to make it so that boxes don't need to be filled in order to be returned to you as well. and there's a couple other safety features added to it in order to make it work. But actually, this box filler specifically ended up being pretty much perfect. It's a 6x box filler, and for reasons that I don't really want to get into at the moment because they're not all that relevant, it was the perfect match for this super smelter. So a little bit bigger than most 6x loaders. You could have found one a little bit smaller, but obviously with the features that I needed, this actually ended up working out to be pretty great. And actually, because it's a 6x loader, that's what kind of makes this a little bit faster. So my previous smelter actually was a little bit slower than this, probably by about 20 or 30 seconds per box, because of the reason of it was actually a little bit slower in refilling the boxes and returning them back to you. So this is actually taking care of that little hitch in the feature, should I say. So we've already received our first box back. Now you can see here that unfortunately you do have the items mixed back up when they get returned to you. But that shouldn't hopefully be a problem anyway. You can always just resort the boxes back out. The main thing is that you can actually use the two at the same time. Now I'll run through the I'll run through that in a little bit more detail when we head over to that one. But I've run a test on that machine where I put in glass and logs at the same time, and I ran that for about 10 double chests worth of shulker boxes and had no issues with it at all. One caveat I actually missed on this this little run, unfortunately, was the very last run when you've just finished all your items. What happens is all of the hopper mine carts that are in storage there all get released at the same time. It's not an issue, doesn't cause any problems with anything. It's just that if you see that happen towards the end of the smelt, don't be alarmed. That it's a part of how it works. It just needs to cycle through all the mine carts, and then they all end up back in storage anyway, so it shouldn't be an issue. And having said that, during that time, we've actually gotten our items back. So you can see that's the extra 4 glass that should be in there, and the extra 4 charcoal that should be in here. You can always move them back in again. You could always add another system here that recompiles, or kind of repackages the charcoal into the actual charcoal box and the glass in the glass box. But honestly, at this point, it'd just be easier for you to remove the items and put them back in together. I think the last thing here to mention before we get into specifics is the fueling system. So in the fueling system here, we have a shulker box loader for fuel. You can use coal, charcoal, blaze rods, whatever you have. All of that should be good. I just wouldn't advise using sticks. I don't think sticks is actually going to work on this. You need something that can at least burn one item at a time. So this is the box loader. It's actually hidden behind a few blocks. The reason why I've covered the shulker box loader up is because sometimes you do have that the box ends up being spat out even with certain blocks in the way. It's quite strange. It shouldn't really be doing this, but I've had it where at the end of a smelt, it's ended up being broken and then ending up in this furnace. So I've just ended up putting a few extra blocks around it just to be safe. So make sure you add those in when you get it too. The box loader is pretty straightforward stuff. It's just a standard box loader. So the way that the refueling system works here, pretty straightforward stuff. You keep your double chest full of shulkers of fuel in this system. And then all you would do is once this hopper here runs out of its last box, so the dispenser will pretty much always stay full of shulker boxes of fuel. But once the hopper here runs out of items, the chest minecart will be sent off. It'll probably drop off 2 here, so you've got a little bit of a surplus. And yeah, so that will be refueling the boxes back into the system. And then again, if I just remove those, that'll send the chest minecart off to refuel 2 boxes. Now, I've obviously made the system pretty much an all shulker design. You could change up a few things if you wanted to in order to make it that it doesn't run off of the shulker box system here. For example, most of the system is running off of this double chest, so all of the fuel is actually being put into here. You could have a direct input for coal straight into the double chest, but when it comes to the larger design over there, this is probably more like of a kind of adapted for that. And personally speaking, if I was going to be using it, I'd probably end up using the same design too. Now, in terms of the empty shulker box fuel boxes, you can see they all get returned to yourself over here. And that should be pretty much everything I need to run through with you guys in terms of the design of itself. I want to run into the more specifics now of what you're going to need to make sure that you do when it comes to building this thing. So first and foremost, and most important thing you want to do, this little jungle log here does indeed need to be a jungle log. And you're also going to be needing some cocoa beans, and you're going to be needing some bone meal. So I'll show you what you're going to need to do. So once you set this whole thing up, everything else should be able to be put in fine, just as you see it here. But the most important thing you're going to need to do is put a stage 2 cocoa bean here. So once you've set all of this up, last thing you want to do, put a cocoa bean down on the jungle log. You're going to want to bone meal it just once. Push this up against here, and you can see it kind of dropped off So it's kind of half hanging off of this thing, off the detector rail, and then you can go ahead and break the cocoa bean. And that's pretty much the main setup of that. Everything else can be put in beforehand. No weird tricks are required for any of those, but make sure you do that for the minecart at the bottom there. And the second to last thing that I think I should mention is how the fuel works. So every one of these hoppers contains pretty much an entirety of fuel. You can, whatever, one less is not a problem. And then you're going to have filler items in the rest of the thing here. You can have all of this to be fuel. It's up to you if you really want it to, but you can just save yourself a little bit of fuel. Have the first hopper with fuel in there, and then the rest of them just with the filler item. And the same goes for this furnace here. You can have it completely full of fuel. So you're going to need 2 stacks of fuel to start off with per section here. And then the only difference is the very first fuel line, or the very first hopper for the fuel line over here, only needs to have 1 piece of coal. So the reason for that is that the system takes an output for how much coal, and I just thought it was either to have it completely full or half full. So if I remove that, you can hear that the minecart has now gone off to refuel. That instantly filled it back up again, and the trapdoor has been reset. So when that comes back around, that will be locked into place. And then you can see here the hopper minecart ends up back here again. And the very last thing I think I actually need to mention is actually for the box loader. So if the box loader does not have enough shulker boxes in it, it will end up locking the system up. As you can see, that's ended up locking the system, putting the composter in place and making it so that you can't actually use the system. So what you want to make sure that you do is always have at least 1 empty shulker box in the dispenser and have at least 1 shulker box in the dropper. After you do this, the whole system is self-containing. So every time you use a shulker box worth of items, it will always recycle that shulker box. So it's basically an infinite loop. Even if you're using half-filled shulker boxes, full shulker boxes, you should never run out. As long as you have 1 in the hopper, 1 in the dispenser, 1 in the dropper, forever it should loop, and you should never need to refill shulker boxes in the box loader over here. Okay, so now that we've got the singular module out of the way, I've gone through the main details of that. Let's go ahead and jump into the larger super smelt behind me, and we'll go through some of the details. Essentially, this is just a stacked version of the singular module, but there is a few differences that I want to run through with you, and then just make sure that you've got a good idea if you're going to end up building this in your world. So first things first, I've actually built this design right here as if you wanted to use it ready to go in your world. You're welcome to use it exactly how it is, but there are some components behind where you could just reconfigure them and make them kind of work however you wanted to. So essentially the input, this is the room here. This is just an example chest, so we'll go ahead and ignore that. The main parts you want to think about here is the input system. That's the input for all of the items that are going to go into the system. You've got the fuel input along with fuel indicator lights. So each light here represents a double chest of shulker boxes. And so we've got three buffer chests at the back. Obviously, you can add a few more and just remove the lights, or add more lights. Just do whatever you want to do with it. I imagine if you're going to be building this, you're probably going to be able to figure all that out. So that's just an indicator for the lights. Sorry, just go ahead and put that back. And then you've also got the empty shulker box for the fuel return system on this side here. And then these are just some example items which I used for smelting. This was actually the example that I mentioned to you earlier about if you were just doing a single box at a time, you could send this into the system and it would have no problem smelting all those items. But again, just 1 box at a time. You could probably get away with a few more, but I'm not gonna consider this as a totally mixed item smelter. I am, however, going to go ahead and consider it a double item smelter, because you can see here that I ran a test with this is only 8 shulker box. Sorry, this is only 8, well, 9.5. But obviously there's some hoppers in the back which take up the rest of them as well. But yeah, so this is a this was 10 double chests worth of mixed items, so glass and logs, and it all smelted just fine. I done a few before as well, so I'm going to go ahead and say this takes up to 2 items with no problem, and that also includes 1 filled box and 1 half-filled box of another item. It could be 2 half-filled boxes of items, no problem at all. All of those things should work fine. So again, what I'm going to do, just for the sake of example, let's go ahead and smelt 10 boxes. So keep in mind, this is basically a 10 of those kind of configured together. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll put in 10 items into the system here. And actually just needed 1 more. So essentially all that's happening is there is a 50-50 item splitter from Ilmango, and it is distributing the items pretty much evenly. And the reason why I ended up even using this was because it has a memory system, so it will always remember which section was used last. And then that way, all that's happening is the items are getting distributed over to the system here. You can see the minecart ends up picking up the items, distributing them across the 10 furnace arrays, or the 5 furnaces on each side. And everything seems to run just fine. So that's going to take care of all of the 10 shulker boxes that we just saw. And I've added quite a bit of buffer in here as well for you guys. So essentially all that's happening, the reason why I've, you don't need this many buffer chests, but if you're doing a crazy amount of items or a crazy amount of shulker boxes of items, then you've got a good amount of buffer. You don't need to worry about the system getting clogged up. So in this case, you've got 12 double chests of items that you could do at a time. Obviously, keep in mind, you've also got 10 spaces worth of hoppers per section too. So you've got loads of space for items here. No, you're not really needing to worry about running out of space when you're filling up the system. If you're smelting more items than that, then I don't really know what you're really doing in this game anymore. And then in addition to that, we've also got the indicator lamps. So this is a little system here that I just comprised of the indicator lamps for the fuel. So this is the 3 double chests here that house the fueling system. And you can see obviously that one's empty, which is why that one light was off. This is the chest minecarts that all the fuel boxes are going into. And actually the most interesting part about this whole system, so essentially, like I said, that this is a tiled version of that system here. The only thing is I've tried to make a slightly smarter fuel system for this. So here's how the fuel system works. So unlike the other one, this runs on a little bit less of a usage of fuel boxes. So you can see in here, you have the dispenser full of the shulker boxes of fuel. And again, you have the one hopper here filled with the one shulker box of fuel in here. Unlike the other one, this chest minecart has only got one item in here. Oh, sorry, one shulker box. So essentially all that happens is once I release this in here, this is obviously going to go ahead and refuel. And that's also going to send off this system to refuel this hopper here. But in order to stop any of the other ones that have fuel in there taking any extra boxes through into the system, every single hopper here is locked unless it needs a box of fuel. So basically every single hopper in the system stays locked unless it actually needs fuel itself. If it does, that will then even if, for example, it gets set off because this system here ran out of a fuel box, and then along the way this one just happened to need it as well, this will be released and it should have enough time to add one more box into the system for this one too. If not, it will just make its way back and then be sent back again, because it will lose the power that it needs in order to stay locked into position. If it doesn't, then obviously this breaks. The chest minecart will get the signal that this one doesn't have fuel, and that will allow it to take in a fuel box here. Okay, so once the items are all refilled, so obviously we sent off those 10 shulker boxes to go ahead and get smelted. We're now down here in the refueling system. So again, everything's pretty much the same as earlier on. The only difference is now we've added a water line to return all the items back to us at the top there, as we're running on a few smelters. So all that happens, you can see, is once the items are filled, the boxes are dispensed out of the system and they're sent straight up into our storage system there. That it seems like all of the items. So let's go back up to the top and check our storage and see if we got all of our 10 shulker boxes back. And yes, we do have all 10 of our shulker boxes back here and returned, and are pretty much done smelting. Now, whilst doing all of this, there was a little break in the recording, as you might have seen. I did find there was a little bit of an issue and caught out a little culprit that was kind of annoying me from before. So as I mentioned when I was showcasing the single unit, there was actually a situation where the shulker boxes were ending up in this furnace when they were broken. I thought that was happening because they were trajectory was randomly being spat out and somehow getting through a block. Somehow being popped through a block and ending up in here. But what was actually happening was, at some point, the hoppers, as they were transferring the item, one of the mine carts that would roll along would actually pick it up. So if you had it at a really strange time, you would have that the boxes would end up being picked up in here. It was a very unlikely occurrence, but did happen and ended up breaking the system. So I've now actually ended up changing the system. So if I go back over to this one, which I haven't changed, but I will make the amendments in the wild download as well, you can see that this runs off of a redstone torch and it basically, how it works is that once it's depowered, that would break that, and then once a new box was dispensed, it would pick up the signal, turn off the redstone lamp, and then it would end up pulling the sticky piston back. But instead of using that system now, we've actually ended up going for an observer system. It actually worked out pretty well. So all we're doing now is, instead of getting a update from the block via a redstone torch, we're using the observer. So once the box is empty, the light will turn off, that will break the box, dispense a new one, and the light will update the observer once again. And at the same time, it powers the dropper here as well, which will end up shooting the box back into the system and end up sending it back to you instead. It's not a big change, probably wasn't really even me worth mentioning, but I just thought it should be something that I've added to the video, just so you can probably see a little bit of a difference. But that should actually get rid of any of the last issues that I was having with here. And it's good to know it wasn't just the way the box was being spat out randomly. It was actually something to do with the minecart picking it up on the way. It's probably, I would have thought this is something I would have picked up along the way, but it didn't seem to have any issues in all the hours of testing that I did. But I think obviously wrong timings can be the issue here. It's just, if you just happen to have the minecart going at the wrong time, it would pick up the box and then spit it out into this first furnace, and that would kind of break the entire system. One other thing I did actually forget to mention whilst I was showing the breakdown of the smelter over there, which is where I got into most of the details, is that this system can handle empty shulker boxes as well. So if for any reason you accidentally chuck in an empty shulker box, you need not fear, it will just be broken and emptied into the system for where the recycled shulker boxes go. So you can see this is the last dropper with an item in here. So if I accidentally put this into the system, and we will do that via this little bit here. So that's an empty shulker box. And you can see all it did was get broken. It didn't actually end up being displayed. It did end up being displayed there, but got broken straight away. And it has now ended up in this, in the refueling system. So if you do end up chucking an empty shulker box in there, don't worry, you'll be perfectly fine. And again, I did mention the whole trick with the cocoa bean. Make sure you're going to have to be doing that for every single individual unit. So just keep that in mind here as well. Other than that, nothing else has really changed based off of the single unit. Now, you can actually go ahead and try and extend the smelter array to a larger number if you really do feel like doing so. I would honestly recommend not to do that. You could probably add just a few more units on, but here's the issue. This system runs off of a hopper minecart, which has 5 slots in there. Now, the reason why I didn't use a chest minecart, for example, is because when you're going back and forth, let's say, for example, you only had, let's say with this 5 setup array, you had 7 boxes. The hopper minecart would go along, distribute the 5 boxes, and then distribute the last 2 boxes at the end here. Ideally, you'd want it that you have the closest arrays to you to be the ones that actually function. So if you did, you could actually extend this thing up a little bit more, use a chest minecart, but you would just have that, if you had a odd number of boxes, that the arrays at the top end would be the ones that have most of the boxes in there, which isn't a huge issue, but I felt like 1280 was a good number. But again, if you feel like expanding, you can do. So I think that pretty much just about covers everything about the smelter array that I think you need to know. If you have any more questions, if you think I've missed anything, or you just need a little bit more detail, please make sure you hit me up in the comment section down below. If it's something a little bit more complicated, I would suggest maybe hitting me up in the Discord. That would probably be the best place for me to reply to you with like screenshots and stuff. So make sure you do that. And the world download link will be in my Discord too, under the world download section. I'll leave a link for that in the description down below, so feel free to go ahead and check that out. Other than that, I think I've pretty much covered everything. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Again, if you did, like, subscribe, all that stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.